This is that same mountain overlooking Putre, where we spend the next couple of nights. Or at least, yeah, next couple of nights. You can see the farming all up the valley. Farming on these plots in between the gulches. Even on the side of the gulch there, straight ahead. The broad fields over there. It's now about just 6:45 in Putre at the Hotel Kukuli, which is actually excellent. It's the best place I've been in. That's not saying much for most people, but for me it is. It's clean, it's neat, it's new. Showers are powerful and give good hot water after you figure it out. Too hot, actually, but just fine. It works great. So I thought I'd take a little cruise around before we have breakfast at 8. I don't know what part of the water system this constitutes. It certainly looks like clear water. Apparently the water they get comes from the rains and so forth, but I also guess that a certain amount comes from the melting of that snow on that mountain. Here's a mural. I don't know what it signifies. In theory, it's financed by the local government, Consejo Nacional de la Cultura, which may mean the organization that supports the small indigenous communities, although this one's becoming more and more tourist-based, I'm sure. This, I think, is the main drag, and I'm going to walk around town a little bit. I have to be a little bit careful because we're at 12,000 feet, and last night I got a little bit dizzy when I was walking too fast back from the restaurant, and then last night I was going to the bathroom. I got a little bit dizzy again and thought I was fainting, but I didn't. So I have to be a little bit careful. We ate in this restaurant last night, which was excellent. For those who eat meat, there were several choices, including pork, beef, and llama. I wonder, though, when I see this and I see the new hotel, which is right next to it that we're staying in, whether this represents a tremendous schism between the poor and the wealthy, whether it is that same issue all over again in a microcosmic situation. This also, I think, is where the center of town is, down through here. This is probably a drainage system for when it does rain. Another nearby restaurant that, even from the outside, other than the typeface, totally lacks the ambience that the first restaurant you saw offers. And that's the distinction I'm talking about. Another mural, and we're now in the center or the core of town. I just waved to a lady. She and I are the only ones on the streets that I can see. I can hear a couple of dogs once in a while bark. The obligatory church. I waved to looking back up the street I just came down, and you can see some new buildings. This is a new building here. I'm not sure that the bank building isn't new. The lady I waved to was an indigenous lady. I waved at a long distance and she waved back. Many people might find some kind of elitist cynicism in that effort, or that exchange rather, but I don't see it that way. To me, it's a small bridge, a very thin, narrow bridge between two vastly different cultures, two vastly different mindsets and life experiences. And that, to me, is a human thing. It is very much, in my opinion, analogous to the initial contact of, for example, Europeans with Native Americans, which was generally good until for other reasons we managed to destroy that. And coming down the street is probably a tour van. Here the little obligatory statue. Even looks like a flagpole behind it. And of course this is just a generalized statue memorializing those, I think, infantry carabiniers or whatever you say, who have given their life. It's interesting, the flowers. I'm guessing they're dried flowers, but they may not be. The temperature this morning is probably about 38. And here next to the square, part of it is playground for children. Always an excellent accomplishment. Another restaurant. Now this mural, again reflecting another project. This is actually quite a pretty little kiosk, an old one it looks like. Looks like metal work is the framework, and then brass inner panels, and then glass. A beautiful little piece if it were restored. And there's wood there, it looks like the countertops. All of it looks restorable, so that's a good thing. 1 block away from the square and things start looking a little more rustic. It has to be a tough life here. Almacén Colocolito. Almacén is usually something like a warehouse or there's some new construction in the form of a wall. What its ultimate purpose is, I don't know. Unless it's simply to support that wall, which I doubt because it's too nicely done. But it may be the prelude to the construction of a building here. And just down the same street, another new building. This looks like a street that maybe initially was designed to be the center entry of town. These little benches crossing that waterway that has just a trickle of water in it now. Newer building there faces out on what I think now is the main entrance. These trees, you can imagine how it would have been had this been the main street. And for whatever reason it isn't. The beautiful trees, it could have been quite a thing, and maybe someday it will. Certainly the dilapidation of some of the buildings would indicate that it has a future, but I don't think so. Just upstream a little bit is where the juncture of the water systems is, and also the history and the future of that road, and perhaps the town. And that is the water here comes down to a new system. Another section of town. A little bit of color. Wood stove probably to heat up the day. And here are the remnants of terracing, unused now. Some more horses ready. Here a sign of the times. A large satellite dish, old, decommissioned, falling apart, decommissioned and replaced by the little, probably DirecTV satellite. That's the entrance to the restaurant there. As I pan around, the buildings here are either newer in construction or are being built, including what looks like could be some little cabanas down there on that point. actually have deers here. That's interesting. I think these are guanacos, although I don't see the black on their heads. Almost looks like a mallard. Has a totally different call. It's kind of like a squeak. This is very sopping wet. You can see traces of water in it. I don't know, it looks mossy and hummocky at the same time. And the black down here suggests that it's that kind of soil. Where the water comes from, I'm not sure. I don't know whether these are a paca or a llama. What's supposed to pass for a guide is neither a professional guide nor a guide. He's simply a driver of the bus.
Brown? Okay.
So these are vicunas.
Non, non, c'est bon.
This is a moss called llareta, and it feels very, almost like these are like little flower type things. At least they look like bulbs up close. Looks like they're part of that moss structure. Either that or a parasite or just an additional plant. There's rabbits and these little mouse-like creatures down here.
Baker family. Huh?
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
From the woodpecker family. This particular spot here kind of illustrates the transition from the desert to this watery riparian kind of ecology that looks mainly like some kind of grassy moss. And maybe surrounding the edges another kind of red plant, maybe a moss or an algae or something. Various grasses, number of birds. Here's some more footprints. I think these are vicuna. The vicuna doesn't have the hoof like a horse, which is why I believe we're looking at the two forward prongs like a deer would have. Some little succulent kind of ground cover up here. And according to the guide, according to the driver, excuse me, this moss is used for fire. Here's another plant that looks like it's about ready to burst out with flowers, unless those flowers are what it normally produces. That's the mountain that was visible from town. So we're moving farther and farther west into the Andes. It seems pretty clear to me that the water that we're seeing is coming from the snow melt on those mountains. On that mountain there, it looks like there could be a small snow cap up there. Vicuna, you can see below, because this is off the road, and so a little more secure. In the background are the two big volcanoes we'll be going to visit that highlight the view of the lake that we'll see when we get over this. I think it's called Alto Plano. I think this is just the early version of that large green moss that was pointed out to me, or algae, or whatever I called it. Just beginning to start. It's formed a little bit of a circle here. See, that looks like a next stage where it starts to form pretty much a round configuration, but yet shallow, but starting to build on itself somehow. Now here to the right, Omedape. Hopefully with that information I can find out what the big one is. And then still a third one down to my right that reflects some kind of cataclysmic explosion sometime in the past. Omedape. Hopefully with that information I can find out what the big one is. And then still a third one down to my right that reflects some kind of cataclysmic explosion sometime in the past.
Mañana, tomorrow morning, you can see nearly.
And nombre again?
Guayatire.
And this one we will see tomorrow morning. To say these are tame is to give the obvious. Gee. It's 6,300 meters, putting it at the top of it at least at 18,000 feet. alpacas, I mean. The white ones are the alpacas.
¿La alpaca, cuál es? ¿La blanca? No.
Acá son de diferentes colores. Negra, café.
Ah,
Más grande.
The alpacas have different.
Es una foto aquí.
perfecto.
Todo esto verde, esto es el bofedal,
You got the
este pasto.
vicuna
The green grass, the name is
and the
wetland.
multicolored
Mhm.
alpacas.
That will be the
So the alpacas are the white ones. The llamas are all the other multicolored ones.
okay.
Pretty little lagoon area that would really be fun to kayak around. Boy, wouldn't that be fun. Camp out on one of the islands over there and just poke around for a few days.
Nous sommes ici au pied du Parinacota, dans toute sa splendeur. Todo isso, trabajo humano o trabajo de la naturaleza?
No, trabajando en naturaleza. Parece, ¿verdad? Como sí. Pero no. The cells.
Yeah, yeah.
And these lagoons are the headwaters of the Rio Lauca River, spelled L-L-A-U-C-A. Here are moraine-like structures. The ones nearest us here seem to be running somewhat from right to left, as opposed to the ones we saw in the lagoon, which just seem to be hummocks, and I forget what the names of those might be. I'd be interested in knowing if that is lava over there. This that I'll pan through is Largo Chungaro. Okay, this is the Lake Largo Chungaro. One of the interesting parts of this pan is this last volcano right here on the right, because it's still active, and I'll pan up to it. I mean, I'll zoom up to it and you'll see. And that mountain is the natural border between Chile and Bolivia. This is 22 kilometers long, 2 kilometers square.
Profesores, todos.
No problema, no problema. Nombre again?
Guayatire.
Okay.
Guayatire.
El activo.
giant coot of some sort. This looks like a least grebe, or the equivalent of it. This is the little town of Parencota. Close enough. This is the little town square. Probably pronounced Parinacota. These look like carved icons. Feeling a little weak from the altitude and probably the pain pill I took for my back. Whistler's wife is not too well today, so I don't know if it's all the same thing. Thing here, crude but effective, I suppose. Must be effective at building standing. Area alongside the church.
Viene más visitas, ¿no?
Sí, pero ahí andan, parece que no.
Tiene que haber un bus de Arica con un estudiante.
Sí.
No, me parece no tenía que estar la
Here are the stations of the cross, painted as murals on the wall, I think. You have to wonder what the models of clothing were for these drawings. I have to say it's one of the interesting ones that I've seen. Here is the one where the soldier is stabbing Christ in the chest, I think.
¿Y cuándo están pinturas?
¿De cuándo son las pinturas?
The accoutrements very simple. This is a very remote, small, simple community. It's interesting to presume that this simple church, with its very old paintings and artifacts, is important to the person who worships their God here, as those huge cathedrals